everyone, it is Vera. She crawls back from hell, literally clawed out of a coffin where her husband nailed her in alive. And the first thing she does, gently pulls the door shut on him, screwing his dead brother's wife, smooths her sleeves, and starts the show. Let's go. The very first thing I did after crawling back from hell was gently pull shut the carved wooden door, hiding my husband as he carried on a secret tryst with his widowed sister-in-law. With a soft click, the latch caught, completely sealing off the sickening, lust-heavy pants coming from inside. Just before the door closed, through the narrow gap, I got a crystal-clear view of the absolute absurdity unfolding within. Liu Jue, my sister-in-law, who was still in her mourning period, wore a stark white, rough-spun mourning dress. She looked like a fragile, spineless vine, clinging helplessly to my husband. Lu Chengzheng's chest, tucked into her dark hair, was a white silk flower, a symbol of mourning for her dead husband. Her almond eyes, perpetually brimming with tears, were flushed at the corners, oozing a sickeningly sweet allure. She was crying, playing the victim, yet her hands, resting on her brother-in-law's waist and slowly undoing his belt, showed not a single ounce of hesitation. Chang Jiang, your brother left so suddenly, he didn't even leave me a child, she sobbed. I'm all alone. How am I supposed to survive in this man-eating Lu family? Take pity on me. Take pity on your late brother. Give me a child. Her voice was soft, melodic, and laced with a desperate, all-or-nothing seduction. And all of this was happening while the front courtyard of the Lu estate was exploding with music and a house full of VIP guests. Today was the absolute peak of my husband's glory. He had just passed the imperial exams with flying colors, earning the title of imperial scholar, and the Lu family was throwing a massive banquet to celebrate. Even separated by several courtyards, I could faintly hear the laughter and flattery of the high-ranking officials toasting the newly minted scholar. Yet here, in the most remote, quietest corner of the estate, the bamboo pavilion, this golden boy with a boundless future was pinned down by his own sister-in-law. He was still putting up a half-hearted fight, muttering things like, "This defies propriety," and "Sister, please conduct yourself." But his hands, smooth as jade, were firmly resting on her incredibly narrow waist, even pulling her a little closer. "Sister, if someone walks in on us, our reputations will be." "No one will come," Shiwei said, rising on her tiptoes. Her warm breath brushed his ear, her voice dropping into a hypnotic whisper. "Just this once, when the baby is born, I'll tell everyone it is your brother's posthumous child. Cheng Zhang, could you really bear to see your brother's bloodline die out?" That completely broke him. Whatever scholarly morality he was pretending to have vanished into thin air at the excuse of preserving the family line. Suddenly taking the lead, he shoved the woman in white onto the soft couch behind the screen. Standing outside in the cold wind, I looked down at my hands, perfect, unscarred, and pale. I slowly curled my fingers into fists. My nails dug deep into my palms, the sharp sting almost euphoric. God was watching. This wasn't the life flashing before my eyes hallucination of a dying woman. I, Xia Zhaning, had actually clawed my way back from hell. "Sister-in-law," a hushed, frantic voice snapped me out of it. Lu Mingzhu darted out from the shadows of the corridor and clamped her hand around my wrist like a vice. "What the hell are you standing there for? Go in there and stop them." She was past marriageable age and currently desperate to marry into one of the capital's elite families. Right now, her usually poised face was twisted in panic, her nails nearly piercing my skin. "My brother just became an imperial scholar. He's waiting for the Ministry of Personnel to assign him an official post. If a scandal like sleeping with his widowed sister-in-law gets out now, his entire future is ruined. Kick the door down and throw that woman out." I didn't shake her off. I just tilted my head and quietly stared at her panicked face. How ironic, in my past life, as I was being nailed alive into my coffin, she had looked exactly this frantic. Except back then, she wasn't rushing to save her brother's career. She was rushing to rip a priceless heirloom jade bracelet off my rapidly cooling wrist. On this exact day in my previous life, I had stood outside this very door, hearing Jiwei's absurd plea for a child. My instincts as the lawful wife and protector of the family's honor took over, and I busted into the room. I played the perfect, dutiful wife, terrified of ruining my husband's bright future and staining the Liu family's century-old reputation with the stigma of incest. I shooed away the servants, guarded the courtyard door myself, and made sure not a single guest out front suspected a thing. Afterward, to bury the scandal permanently, I swallowed my pride and suggested adopting a smart kid from a branch of the Liu family to put under the deceased brother's name. That way, the late brother had an heir, and Jiwei could keep her status as the matriarch of the primary branch, permanently killing any excuse she had to cling to my husband. I thought I had been thorough and merciful. I saved the Liu family's face and gave Jiwei a dignified out. What did I get in return? After returning to her maiden home, Jiwei suddenly fell, violently ill, and died within 6 months. The entire Liu family pointed fingers at me behind my back, claiming she died of a broken heart because I, the jealous wife, had ruthlessly humiliated her. My husband believed it too, but he was a master at playing the long game. He didn't turn on me. Instead, he put on the mask of a loving husband mourning his tragic sister-in-law, all while happily sucking my maiden family, the Shi family, dry. He used my father's deep political connections to skyrocket up the ranks. 3 years later, heavily pregnant with twins, I was on my way to a temple outside the city when my carriage was ambushed by bandits. I lost my unborn babies, and my young daughter was left permanently crippled. Me father ran himself ragged begging for favors to get Liu Chengjiang a better position, just hoping it would buy me a little comfort and leverage in my husband's home. But on a rainy day, as I dragged my sick body out to bury the empty clothes of my dead babies, my deeply devoted husband shoved me into a bottomless, empty coffin. Separated by heavy wood, he finally ripped off his gentle mask and spat out years of hidden venom. I arranged the ambush. I never forgave you for ruining my moment with Jiwei, and I never forgave you for forcing her to her death. A vicious, jealous bitch like you deserves to go down to hell with your sickly brat and pay for what you did to her. Inside the coffin, I pounded on the lid until my fingernails bled, begging him for the sake of our marriage to at least spare my infant daughter. But Lu Mingju just crouched outside, scrubbing the jade bracelet she had just pulled off my wrist with a look of utter disgust. This belongs to the Liu family. I am not letting it go into the dirt and get tainted with dead man's luck. Later, when my father, who was down south managing disaster relief, heard the news of my death, he coughed up blood and never made it back to the capital. My mother died of grief within a year. The blood and bones of the entire Xia family paved Liu Chengjiang's path to becoming the prime minister. A gust of early spring wind swept through the courtyard, pulling me back from the bone-deep hatred. Here I was, standing outside the door again. Inside, my husband's muffled groans. Outside, his sister's entitled demands. I raised my eyes, my gaze as still and dead as an ancient well, and looked right at her. Since you see the situation so clearly, and even know how to clean up the mess, why don't you go in yourself? Mingju froze, looking at me like I had grown a second head. Her voice shot up an octave. I am an unmarried girl. How can I look at something so filthy? Oh, I fired back. You can't look at it, but I can. You are his lawful wife, she said, completely self-righteous, hitting me with a condescending dose of moral blackmail. Cleaning up your husband's backyard messes and covering his tracks is your duty. Just go in there, slap her a few times, and quietly have someone sneak her out the back door to her family. We can bury this without anyone knowing. I almost laughed out loud. In my last life, I was blind. I never realized how simple and brutal the Liu family's logic was. When he's successful and bringing in the perks, Liu Chengjiang is the pride of the Liu family, but the second he drops his pants in a study and causes a catastrophe, he suddenly becomes my husband, and it is solely my job to close the doors and scrub his messes clean. She wanted me to bust in there so I would play the villain and take the rap as a jealous, tyrannical wife. Meanwhile, she could hide safely in the corridor and remain the Liu family's pure, elegant, innocent daughter. But my husband hates it when I meddle in his private affairs, I said, lowering my eyelashes and clutching my handkerchief, perfectly playing the part of a timid, cowed little wife. He warned me repeatedly that the bamboo pavilion is a sacred place for study. Without his permission, even as his wife, I can't step 1 foot inside. If I go in there now, what if I make him angry? Mingzhu stomped her foot, throwing all her ladylike etiquette out the window. The house is practically on fire and you care about his stupid rules. Are you brain dead? A wife must follow her husband, I whispered, adding just the right touch of grievance to my voice. You heard him yourself, Mingzhu. He didn't push her away. I imagine he's quite willing. If I walk in now, wouldn't I just be ruining his fun? Right on cue, a soft clatter came from inside. It sounded like a jade hairpin hitting the brick floor, followed immediately by a desperately muffled moan. Mingzhu's face cycled through shades of green and white. She stared at the closed door in horror, then looked frantically toward the front yard, a layer of cold sweat breaking out on her forehead. You are a completely useless piece of trash, she snarled, grabbing her skirts, abandoning any pretense of manners. If you won't handle it, I am getting mother. Watching her run away in a panic, I called out after her, neither too loud nor too soft. Sister, you can't. There are so many guests today. Please don't go. The volume was perfectly calculated to make her think I was terrified of blowing the incident up. Naturally, she ran faster than a rabbit, terrified that a second's delay would cost her brother his entire career on that couch. Once she vanished through the moon gate, I slowly turned to look at my personal maid, Qingdai, who was standing in the shadow of the bamboo. Qingdai was holding a food box, her face pale as paper. She had obviously heard every sound from the room and every word of my conversation with Mingzhu. As a loyal servant who had grown up in the Xia household and come with me as part of my dowry, she knew exactly what a scandal like this meant. My lady, Qingdai's voice shook. Go to the front yard, I said, dropping the fragile wife act instantly. My voice was ice cold and decisive. Quietly find my mother. Tell her I suddenly felt horribly dizzy and unwell, and ask her to bring people to the backyard to get me right away. Remember, make the tears look real, but absolutely do not alarm anyone else, and do not breathe a word about what happened here. Qingdai was my oldest confidante for a reason. She froze for half a second before clarity flared in her eyes. She understood the assignment. I understand. I'll go get Madame Xia right now. After she left, I stood alone in front of the carved door, calmly smoothing out the wrinkles in my sleeves. I knew Mingzhu was going to bring my mother-in-law. Sunday given Sunday's overbearing, arrogant, and deeply paranoid personality. The second she saw me desperately blocking the door, she would immediately assume I was hiding something shameful, or that I was doing something filthy behind her son's back. The harder I played the submissive victim and begged her not to enter, the harder she would push to assert her dominance as the matriarch, kicking the door down in front of an audience. In my last life, I acted like a fool, bleeding myself dry to cover up Lu Chengzheng's tracks, only to end up with my family destroyed. This time, I wasn't just going to let their little fire burn. I was going to throw the doors wide open and make sure every single guest had a front row seat to the show. Less than half a cup of tea later, a flurry of chaotic footsteps echoed from outside the courtyard. Sunday, dressed in a brand new gold-threaded purple jacket and supported by Mingzhu, stormed over, looking furious. She had been soaking up the flattery of the capital's noble wives in the front yard, and being interrupted had left her seething. The gold ornaments in her hair shook violently with every step. What kind of nonsense are you pulling now? Sunday hissed from a distance, keeping her voice low but venomous. The house is full of VIPs today, and you two are hiding in this remote courtyard causing a scene. If you disturb the lords out front, I'll flay you alive. I immediately snapped into character, looking like a terrified fawn. I rushed forward a few steps and physically blocked the door with my body. Mother, it is nothing important. The wind is strong here. You should hurry back to entertain the ladies. Sunday's sharp, calculating eyes swept over my face like a knife. Nothing? If it is nothing, why are you guarding the bamboo pavilion door like a watchdog? Mingzhu hopped from foot to foot, ready to tattle. Mother, brother is inside with. I was faster. I raised my voice, loudly cutting her off. Sister, your brother specifically ordered that no one is to disturb his studies. As the women of this house, we should know our place. There are so many powerful officials out front today. If we make a scene and ruin my husband's reputation as a new scholar, who will take the blame? The word reputation hit Sunday's exact trigger point. Her eyes shifted instantly. Her annoyance vanished, replaced by the look of a viper smelling blood. She locked onto my face. What do you mean, ruin Changjiang's reputation, Shi Zhoning? Tell me the truth right now. What kind of filthy secret are you hiding in that room? I am not hiding anything, I said, my voice pitching into a panic. I planted myself firmly in the center of the doorway, refusing to budge an inch. The bamboo pavilion is his study. It's full of his exam essays, Mother. Please just don't go in. Ridiculous, Sunday barked, laughing in sheer rage, the fat on her face quivering. Is there anywhere in this house I cannot enter? I carried him for 10 months and raised him, and now you tell me I can't go into his study. Get out of my way. Mother, I didn't mean that. Please don't. I reached out to weakly block her. Sunday had entirely lost her patience. Convinced I was pulling some dirty trick inside, she grabbed my sleeve and yanked me to the side with all her strength. Get lost. That shove was exactly what I was waiting for. Riding her momentum, I stumbled backward, letting the side of my forehead slam hard into the decorative jagged rocks by the door. Ah, I let out a soft cry and collapsed to the ground. The white jade hairpin fell from my hair and shattered into 2 crisp pieces on the bricks. A sharp pain bloomed, and a stark streak of crimson blood trickled down my forehead, dripping onto my pale blue collar. It looked terrifying. At that exact perfect moment, my mother, Madame Kui, guided by Qingdai, stepped through the moon gate. Taking one look at me sitting on the ground with blood running down my face, my mother's expression shattered. She practically flew across the courtyard and scooped me into her arms. Zhoning, my baby! My mother's voice trembled with sheer heartbreak as she frantically pressed her handkerchief to my bleeding head. What happened? How did you get hurt like this? The commotion could no longer be contained. Several noble wives who had been strolling in the nearby gardens to get some fresh air heard the scream and crowded around the courtyard entrance, craning their necks. Seeing the matriarch of the powerful Xia family arrive, and noticing the audience of outsiders, Sunday's face fell. Trying to maintain her arrogant posture, she offered an awkward defensive smile. Don't misunderstand, Madame Kui. She was disrespecting her elders, blocking the door and refusing to move. I just gently nudged her aside. Who knew she was so fragile that she'd throw herself into a rock? My mother, a woman of impeccable aristocratic grace, let her face turn to absolute ice. She looked at the blood on my head, then followed the direction I had been guarding, staring at the tightly shut door. Zhoning, why were you blocking your mother-in-law? I bit my bottom lip hard, tears welling in my eyes. I looked as though I had suffered the greatest injustice in the world but was swallowing it down, refusing to speak a single word. The more I played the silent martyr, the more Sunday was convinced that the room held the key to my destruction. Desperate to assert her dominance in front of the Xia family and eager to publicly expose my crimes, she pointed right at my nose, her voice shrill and piercing. I am going to expose you in front of everyone today. Let's see exactly what kind of filthy, shameless garbage a well-bred daughter of the Xia family has been doing inside my son's study. Her hysterical scream didn't just pierce the backyard, it blew straight through to the front. Normally, male guests strictly avoided the inner courtyards, but today, The Lu estate was packed to the brim and chaotic. Someone heard the matriarch screaming about filthy things, and a gossipy servant immediately warped it into. A thief broke into the backyard and attacked someone. That was all it took. Lu Zhengqian, the head of the Lu family, desperate to protect the new imperial scholar's prestige, had to bite the bullet. He hurriedly led a group of respected family elders toward the backyard to investigate. And the cherry on top, walking shoulder to shoulder with him, treated like an absolute living god, was Lord Han Weizheng from the Ministry of Personnel. Whether Lu Chengzhang got a lucrative, fat cat government post or a dead-end assignment was entirely up to Lord Han's pen. Lu Zhengqian had been worshipping the man all day. Now, arriving in the backyard, finding not a thief, but a loud crowd of arguing women, and seeing the matriarch of the Xia family furiously clutching her bleeding daughter, Lu Zhengqian's face turned as black as the bottom of a wok. "What is the meaning of this? Why are you all gathered here?" he demanded with heavy authority, sweeping his gaze over the crowd. "Where is Cheng Zhang? I thought he was in here studying." The moment Mingzhu saw that even Lord Han had been dragged over, her brain short-circuited. She finally realized this fire had burned completely out of control. Her legs gave out. She grabbed Sunday's sleeve, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. Mother, let's just go back. Forget it, brother. Brother might really just be focusing on his studies inside. If we force our way in, we'll disturb him." Sunday, thoroughly confused by her daughter's sudden 180, glared at her in disbelief. "Are you out of your mind? You are the one who dragged me out here in a panic, and now you want to play turtle and retreat." All the color drained from Mingzhu's face. She looked like she wanted the earth to swallow her whole. I think I heard wrong." The more she babbled and backtracked, the more intriguing the scene became to the onlookers. Everyone in that crowd came from wealthy households. Who among them hadn't seen a juicy domestic scandal or two? Lu Zhengqian, utterly obsessed with saving face, was terrified Lord Han would sense an ugly family secret. He threw his weight around as the patriarch embarked. "It is merely a study. In broad daylight, what could possibly be shameful about it? Cheng Zhang made the golden list today, and Lord Han has graced us with his presence to congratulate him. Call him out here to bow and thank his lordship." With that, he marched up to the door and pounded the brass ring twice. "Cheng Zhang, open the door!" Inside, dead silence. Not even the rustle of a turning page. The muscles in Lu Zhengqian's cheek twitched. His voice deepened, a sliver of unease leaking through. "Cheng Zhang, are you deaf?" Still, no answer. In the crowd, a few sharp-minded ladies covered their mouths with their handkerchiefs, exchanging highly suggestive glances. Whispers began to ripple through the audience like silk tearing, trapped and riding a tiger he couldn't dismount. Lu Zhengqian abandoned the refined elegance of a scholar. He took a step back, raised his foot, and viciously kicked open the heavy carved wooden door. Bang! As the door smashed against the wall, a frantic, highly suppressed woman's shriek echoed from behind a painted privacy screen. The small red clay stove in the room was burning hot, sending a wave of warm air rushing out, but it chilled every single person present to the bone. There stood the dignified new imperial scholar, Lu Chengzhang, looking thoroughly disheveled and panicked, shielding a soft daybed with his body. His formal brocade outer robe was completely stripped off, tossed carelessly over a chair. The collar of his inner robes was thrown wide open, his hair a mess. The dignified, intellectual aura he had projected at the banquet an hour ago was entirely gone. And on the bed behind him, a woman dressed in mourning whites had her back to the door, shrinking like a terrified quail. She was desperately yanking the silk quilt over herself, trying to cover her half-undressed body. What was even more blindingly obvious was the white silk mourning flower, the kind worn by widows, sitting lonely on the cold brick floor. And right next to Lu Chengzhang's feet, like a resounding slap to the face, lay a stark white mourning sash. Embroidered on it was the name of his dead brother, Lu Chenggang. The bamboo pavilion, chaotic just seconds ago, fell into a graveyard silence. You could hear a pin drop. The only sound was the rustle of bamboo leaves in the wind. Lu Zhengqian stood frozen in the doorway, as if struck by lightning, his hand still suspended in a pushing motion, his eyes practically bulging out of his skull. Sunday's lips quivered violently. A strange, choking gargle came from her throat, but she couldn't form a single word. Mingzhu's knees gave out completely, and she collapsed in a heap against a pillar. In the midst of this humiliating, suffocating silence, Lord Han Weizheng, the man in charge of evaluating the moral character of every official in the empire, stepped forward, his face completely devoid of expression. He slowly bent down and picked up the glaring white mourning sash. As he read the name embroidered in silver thread, the polite, networking smile he had worn all day vanished without a trace. "Scholar Lu," Lord Han said, standing up straight, his gaze cold as frost, bypassed the half-naked Lu Chengzhang and cut straight to the shivering lump under the blankets. His voice wasn't loud, but every word was a death sentence. "Is the woman hiding on that bed the widow of your recently deceased brother?" Lord Han's voice wasn't loud, but it hit the courtyard like a thunderbolt, blowing the silence to absolute shreds. Every drop of blood drained from Lu Chengzhang's face, leaving him looking like a corpse. He opened his mouth, his instinct to lie kicking in. But the moment his eyes met the mourning sash in Lord Han's hand, bearing the large, unmistakable characters, Lu Chenggang, every excuse died in his throat. All that was left was suffocating, inescapable shame. On the bed, Liu Zhuwei yanked the quilt entirely over her head, shrinking into a ball like a maggot exposed to the sun, terrified of showing even an inch of skin. Lu Zhengqian stumbled backward, nearly knocking over a rosewood side table. No, he whipped his head around, his bloodshot eyes darting desperately over the crowd. He looked like a man trying to convince the world, and himself, of a lie. "Lord Han, this is a misunderstanding. A massive misunderstanding. That woman absolutely cannot be my eldest daughter-in-law. Jiwei is a deeply proper woman. She is currently in her own courtyard, eating vegetarian meals and mourning her late husband. How could she possibly be in Chengzhang's study?" Like a madman, he lunged forward and snatched the mourning sash from Lord Han's hand. But the moment his eyes focused on the familiar needlework and the name, the hands that had held countless volumes of sage philosophy began shaking harder than leaves in a hurricane. Sunday, meanwhile, charged into the room like a rabid lioness. She pointed a trembling finger at the lump on the bed and shrieked, "Which cheap whore sent you here? Show your face right now so I can see what you look like." Jiwei stayed curled under the blanket, frozen save for the violent trembling of her shoulders, betraying her absolute terror. Sunday refused to believe her eyes, and she certainly refused to face this apocalyptic truth. She whipped around and grabbed Lu Chengzhang's arm, her fingernails digging deep into her son's flesh. "Chengzhang, tell me, who is this shameless bitch? Is she some high-class prostitute you brought in from outside?" Cold sweat poured down Chengzhang's forehead, dripping onto his open shirt. He looked away, pathetic and ruined. "Mother, it is not what you think." A suppressed, mocking snicker rippled through the crowd of guests. The man's robes were off. The woman's mourning sash was on the floor. A man and a woman locked in a steamy private study. What else could it be? Were they in there aggressively debating Confucian ethics? An elderly, highly respected elder of the Lu family slammed his walking stick hard into the ground, his face dark with fury. "Chengzhang, if there's a misunderstanding, have that woman come out, show her face, and explain herself to everyone." Another male guest couldn't resist adding fuel to the fire, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Indeed, Brother Lu Lord Han is right here. If some blind, ignorant peasant set a trap to frame our new imperial scholar, you can have his lordship demand justice for you, right?" But Lu Chengzhang stood rooted to the spot, using his body as a desperate shield in front of the bed, refusing to yield an inch. The harder he tried to hide her, the more convinced the crowd became. The identity of the woman on that bed was something that absolutely could not see the light of day. Supported by my mother, I stood quietly by the door, coldly watching the circus unfold. On the surface, I maintained the perfect image of a sheltered, clueless wife, bewildered, lost, and appropriately fragile. Lord Han glanced back at me, his brow furrowing slightly, as if confused by my utter lack of reaction. Young Madame Lu, since this is your husband's study, as his lawful wife, do you know the identity of the woman on that bed? I flinched like a startled deer, then slowly shook my head. My voice was so soft it sounded like it might break in the wind. To answer your lordship, my husband established a strict rule. This bamboo pavilion is a sacred place for study, and I am forbidden from ever stepping foot inside. My husband said his vital exam essays were kept here, and that women are shallow-minded and clumsy. If I accidentally messed up his manuscripts, it might ruin his brilliant future. The moment I said that, the crowd's gaze shifted from shock to blatant, unfiltered mockery. What a remarkably disciplined new scholar. He guards his study from his lawfully wedded wife like she's a thief, refusing to let her even cross the threshold. But he turns right around and lets a woman in full mourning gear strip down and roll onto his bed. The rules of the Lu family were truly unique. Lu Chengjiang's eyes bulged with panic. He whipped his head toward me and roared, "Jianing, stop talking nonsense! I was just afraid you would misunderstand." I stared back at him, my tear-filled eyes the picture of innocent confusion. "Why would you say that, husband? I haven't even said anything yet. You refuse to tell us who this girl is, so why are you so certain I would misunderstand?" He choked, his face turning beet red, looking like he had swallowed a live fly. A noble lady standing next to me couldn't help but cover her mouth with a handkerchief, sighing softly. She lowered her voice and whispered, "This Xie family daughter has always been famously gentle and accommodating. She has been married into the Lu family for years and is known for her sweet temper. No one has ever heard her raise her voice. Now she catches this disgusting scene with her own eyes, and her first reaction is still to protect her husband's dignity. Poor thing." Hearing the outsiders sympathize with me and condemn her son, Sunday completely lost her mind. If Lu Chengjiang got labeled a heartless husband who favors concubines over his wife, it would be enough to get him shunned. But if he was pinned with the unholy crime of incest with his sister-in-law, forget a government post. The imperial censors would spit fire onto the graves of 8 generations of his ancestors. In a state of sheer panic, Sunday found a surge of adrenaline. She shoved Lu Chengjiang out of the way, lunged at the bed like a starving tiger, grabbed the silk blanket the woman was clinging to, and yanked it off with all her might. "You cheap whore, let's see which shameless slut dared to sneak into this house and seduce my son on the day of his glory." Riete, the blanket tore away. With nowhere left to hide, Jiwei gripped the last remaining corner of the quilt and screamed in pure, unadulterated terror. "Mother? No!" The second that desperate, terrified plea left her lips, it was as if someone had hit Sunday with a paralyzing spell. She froze in place, stiff as a board. She knew that voice entirely too well. It was the voice she had listened to every day for the past 3 years, the voice of her eldest daughter-in-law. Jue? Sunday's lips violently trembled, her eyes widening, as if she were looking at a demon crawling out of hell. Stripped of her cover, Liu Jue slowly, agonizingly, lifted her face. Her normally perfect widow's updo was a tangled mess, her long black hair cascading wildly over her thin, white inner robes. Her eyes, always so good at looking weak and pitiful, were wide with terrified tears, and the white mourning flower that was supposed to be in her hair was nowhere to be seen. A collective, synchronized gasps sucked the air out of the courtyard. Good heavens! It really is the eldest daughter-in-law. This is an absolute disgrace. Her husband hasn't even been dead for a few months. Her mourning period isn't over. She hasn't even taken off her mourning clothes, and she is doing this with her own brother-in-law in broad daylight. She always looked so fragile and innocent, refusing to even leave the house, Who knew she was this wild behind closed doors? Listening to the razor-sharp whispers slicing through the room, Zhu Wei's face turned translucent white. Instinctively, she looked at Lu Chengjiang, a deep flash of pure hatred cutting through her tears. Just half an incense stick of time ago, behind this very door, this man had tenderly cupped her face and sworn that even if the sky fell, he would protect her. But now that everything had blown up in their faces, he was cowering in front of her like a turtle, too terrified to say a single word in her defense slap. A sharp, explosive crack rang out. Unable to bear the ultimate humiliation for another second, Lu Zhengchen swung his arm in a massive arc and slapped Lu Chengjiang across the face with everything he had. "You animal! You degenerate!" Lu Zhengqian shook with rage, pointing right at his nose, screaming, "Your brother's body isn't even cold yet. And you dare to commit such a monstrous, sickening act?" The force of the slap whipped Chengjiang's head to the side, a streak of stark crimson blood instantly appearing at the corner of his mouth. Clutching his burning cheek, it was as if the pain finally snapped him out of his panic. He dropped heavily to his knees, crawled to his father's feet, and began blubbering, snot and tears mixing as he spat out his defense. "Father, father, listen to me." It was her. She came to me crying, saying she was a widow with no one to rely on, and she didn't even have a child to secure her future. She begged me to leave a bloodline for my brother. I've read the sage's books for years. I just felt pity for her. It was a moment of foolish pity. Lu Zhengqian nearly had a stroke on the spot. "Leave a bloodline for your brother?" he roared, his finger trembling violently as he pointed at his son. "You have the nerve to bring such filthy, sickening garbage to my ears!" The white-bearded Lu family elder slammed his cane into the floor again. Absurd. The biggest joke under heaven. A brother inheriting his sister-in-law is a barbaric custom for uncultured savages. The Lu family may have fallen on hard times, but we have been clean, proper scholars of Confucius for generations. You are an imperial scholar chosen by the emperor himself, and you dare to use preserving the family line as a righteous excuse to cover up what you did with your pants down. Standing off to the side, Lord Han Weizheng's face had turned so cold you could scrape frost off it. Lu Chengjiang had just made the golden list. The paperwork assigning him his official post hadn't even been stamped yet. When the ministry evaluated an official, they didn't just look at talent and resume. Moral character was paramount. Lord Han had come today as a personal favor to my father, Shi Wenyuan, hoping to build a good relationship with this promising young scholar. Who could have predicted he would walk right into a grotesque, shameless incest scandal? If he said a single good word for Lu Chengjiang now, the censor's impeachment reports would bury the emperor's desk in a blizzard of paper by tomorrow morning. Han Weizheng himself would be dragged down for blindness and harboring criminals. Thinking of this, Lord Han sharply demanded, "Lu Chengjiang, are you admitting right here and now that you engaged in an illicit affair with your widowed sister-in-law inside this room?" Chengjiang flinched violently. He finally realized his panicked excuse was a confession. If he agreed, he was pleading guilty in front of an audience. He immediately started aggressively denying it, kowtowing repeatedly. "No, absolutely not. I only listened to her cry about my brother having no heir, and I let her in to comfort her with a few words. She and I are as pure as the sun and moon. We never crossed the line." Someone in the crowd couldn't hold it back anymore. They glanced mockingly at the discarded robe on the chair, then at the mourning sash on the floor, and let out a sharp, cold snort of laughter. It wasn't loud, but it hit like a baseball bat, turning Lu Chengjiang's desperately serious face a deep, humiliating shade of purple. Seeing her son backed against a cliff, Sunday's brain short-circuited, she desperately scrambled to spin his story. Yes, exactly. My son has always been morally upright. He would never give in to temptation. It must be this restless, venomous woman. She saw that my son passed the exams and has a bright future, so she got jealous and greedy. She deliberately took off her clothes and threw herself at him. To protect her youngest son, the Lu family's final cash cow, Sunday didn't hesitate for a microsecond. She dumped every drop of dirty water squarely onto Lu Jue's head. She pointed at her eldest daughter-in-law like she was looking at a pile of rotting trash. Jue, as the eldest sister-in-law, why aren't you in your courtyard chanting sutras and mourning? What are you doing stripping half-naked in your brother-in-law's private study? Did you see Chengzheng moving up in the world and decide to use your filthy body to cling to him? Do you have no shame at all? Zhou Wei whipped her head up, staring in absolute disbelief at the mother-in-law spewing pure venom at her. Ever since she married into the Lu family with her meager dowry, Sunday had despised her for being poor and had never given her a single day of peace. But as long as the eldest son was alive, Sunday had maintained the fake facade of a loving mother-in-law to save face for the main branch. Now, with the eldest son barely cold in the ground and their scandal exposed, this woman, who constantly bragged about the Lu family's pristine reputation, didn't hesitate for a second to brand her a slut. Jiwei's tears fell like a broken string of pearls. Her voice was pure agony. "Mother, how can you ruin my purity like this? How can you humiliate me?" Sunday crossed her arms and let out a disgustingly arrogant scoff. "Humiliate you? Which word did I say wrong?" Chengzheng has Zhouning, a noble, beautiful, proper daughter of the Xia family, as his lawful wife. Is he blind? Did he get shit in his eyes? Why would he ever look at a cursed widow who killed her own husband? If you little fox spirit, hadn't used cheap tricks to actively seduce him, my brilliant, pure son would never have made such a mistake. Hearing his mother's utterly shameless scapegoating, Chengzheng's eyes shifted, and then he actually lowered his head, completely comfortable letting his mother trample Jue to death. He didn't say a single word to defend her. Jue stared dead at the man kneeling on the floor. In her tear-filled eyes, the final spark of hope completely died. It was probably only in this exact second that she realized the ocean of romantic promises he had whispered in bed meant absolutely nothing compared to the word career. I stood by the door, quietly admiring the dog-eat-dog show. In my past life after Jiwei died, Lu Chengzhang had worshipped her as his untouchable true love, his white moonlight. He always looked so heartbroken, telling everyone that Jiwei was weak and helpless, and that it was entirely my fault, the narrow-minded, jealous, toxic wife, that she was driven to her grave. But now, I was standing right here. I hadn't lifted a single finger. I hadn't said a single cruel word, and the ones tearing this fragile little white lotus to shreds, ripping her skin off bone by bone, were none other than her most trusted mother-in-law and the lover who had sworn to protect her forever. This live play was 1,000 times better than tearing her apart myself. Enough. Lord Han had finally heard enough. He coldly cut off Sunday's fishwife, screaming, "Who undressed who is not something you people can settle by screaming at each other like street brawlers?" His icy gaze swept over the Lu family. With a house full of guests watching, the deed is already done. As a family of scholars, the Lu family must offer a resolution that satisfies the public. With that, Lord Han turned to me. His tone softened significantly. "Young Madam Lu, you are Lu Chengzhang's lawfully wedded wife. This happened in your estate. How do you wish to handle it?" Instantly, every single eye in the courtyard snapped to me. There was sympathy, eager anticipation for drama, and the dark warning glares from the Lu family demanding I play along. My mother gripped my hand tightly, worried she knew my temper was soft. She was terrified that, for the sake of marital duty and the bigger picture, I would swallow the poison again. I gently patted my mother's hand to reassure her. Then, I lifted my skirts, slowly stepped over the threshold into the room, and offered Lord Han a deep, perfectly poised, completely dignified bow. "To answer your lordship? Since my husband just swore to the heavens that he merely had a moment of foolish pity, then as his wife, it is only natural that I believe him." Hearing this, Lu Chengzheng's head snapped up. An expression of wild, survived a disaster relief exploded across his pale face. He thought I was still the same blind, idiotic Xie Zhaoning. He thought that as long as he gave some grand excuse, as long as he acted a little pathetic, I would act like a loyal dog, sacrificing everything to clean up his mess. I looked at the poorly hidden joy in his eyes, a faint smile curling the corner of my mouth. Taking my time, I continued. In our empire, once a man achieves academic honors, taking in a concubine to serve him is considered an elegant tradition. Since my husband feels such deep pity for this young woman, as the lady of this house, I should be generous. I am willing to take a step back, follow the proper customs, and formally welcome this woman into the Liu family. The moment I said that, the gaze of every noble wife and guest in the room shifted to one of sheer awe and respect. Oh my, this Xia family daughter truly possesses the grace of a noble house, isn't she? A man would have to pray for 8 lifetimes to marry a woman with a heart that big. The main wife agreeing to take her in as a concubine. It's disgusting, but at least it saves a shred of dignity for the new scholar. But while the crowd sang my praises, Lu Chengjiang felt like he had been plunged into an ice bath. He couldn't force out a single drop of joy. Who was Lu Jue, his biological sister-in-law? If he nodded and agreed to bring her into his room as a concubine, it would be the exact same thing as carving incest with sister-in-law in giant black and white letters directly onto the Liu family tree. How the hell was Lu Chengjiang ever supposed to show his face in politics again, acting completely oblivious to his stiff, horrified panic? I turned around. With crystal clear eyes, I looked straight at Liu Jue on the bed. My voice was so sweet, it could melt sugar. Miss, I heard you say earlier that you were alone and helpless. Now, I am willing to open the door for you and give you an official status. Are you willing? Wei's already pale lips lost what little color they had left. She clenched her jaw, glaring at me like she wanted me dead. Of course she wasn't going to agree. A normal concubine was lower than dirt in front of the main wife. They had to follow strict rules, bow and scrape, and were treated worse than pets. Furthermore, she was originally the first madam of the Liu family, brought in through the main gates in an 8-bearer sedan chair. Letting her former sister-in-law step on her head and torture her, going from the highly respected elder sister to her younger brother-in-law's cheap bed warmer. Not only would she suffer my torment for the rest of her life, but she would also carry the eternal, historical stigma of being a shameless, incestuous whore. She bit her lip hard and didn't say a single word. Seeing her resistance, I frowned slightly, pretending to be confused. Since you are so unwilling, miss, I don't understand. If you weren't willing, why did you undo your belt and hide in this locked study with my husband? Could it be you don't actually want to serve him for the rest of your life? Sunday was listening to this, her heart leaping into her throat, terrified that I would actually force the widow through the door and destroy her son's career forever. She jumped up and screamed, "Johnning, what kind of garbage are you spewing? What kind of miss is she?" I turned my head and looked at Sunday with ultimate innocence. Mother, didn't you just tell everyone that she was an outsider fox spirit who intentionally seduced my husband? That light, breezy sentence hit Sunday like a brick. It was like she choked on a mouthful of decades-old blood. Her face turned purple. It was true. To wash Lu Chengjiang clean of the willing incest crime just moments ago, she had sworn up and down that Liu Jue was a seductive outside tramp. If she was a shameless outside tramp, then according to my generous and virtuous handling of the situation, carrying her in through the side door in a cheap pink palanquin to be a lowly concubine was absolutely 100% reasonable. But if Sunday changed her story now and admitted the person on the bed was Lu Chengjiang's sister-in-law, then regardless of who undressed who, the ironclad crime of incest would be enough to send Lu Chengjiang straight to prison. Sunday was trapped in an impossible paradox. Her old face swelled to the color of pork liver, and she gasped for air. I acted like I didn't notice her panic at all. I kept playing the role of the considerate wife doing everything for the Liu family. Mother, there's no need to worry so much. As long as this girl comes from a clean background and truly loves my husband, I am absolutely not a jealous wife. Tonight, we can arrange a small blue sedan chair to bring her quietly through the side gate. After the heat dies down in a few weeks, We can set up a small family dinner that will fulfill her deep devotion and save the family's face. What do you think? Standing off to the side, Lord Han gave me a deep, very thoughtful look. He had survived decades in the bloody trenches of politics. He had seen every backstabbing trick in the book. He knew instantly that I was playing dumb to force their hand. Except, from start to finish, I hadn't named Lu Jue once. I hadn't told a single lie, and I hadn't acted like a crazy fishwife, tearing open the Lu family's disgusting secrets myself. Every single choice, every single excuse, the Lu family had made it themselves. Lu Chengjiang's mental defenses finally completely shattered under the slow, agonizing torture of my questions. He lunged up from the floor, screaming hysterically, "No, I can't take her. I absolutely cannot take her." I slowly turned my head and looked calmly at his face, completely twisted in terror. "Taking my time?" I asked. "Why not? Didn't you just say you two were completely innocent? If you are innocent, why were a man and a woman locked in a room together with your outer robes off?" Even taking a step back, if you both couldn't control yourselves and made a mistake, me showing mercy and giving her an official status in the house is the safest way to protect both your reputations, isn't it? Lu Chengjiang was struck dumb. His mouth opened and closed, but not a single word came out. I took one step closer. My voice was soft, but every word drove into his weakness like a nail. Or is it that this woman's true identity is something so dark and shameful that she can never ever enter the Lu family's door? The veins on his forehead throbbed violently. Massive drops of sweat rolled down his face. After a long time, like a fish out of water, his mouth gaped open, but he couldn't put together a single complete sentence. Lord Han couldn't stomach the disgusting display for another second. He let out a cold snort and violently threw the mourning sash with the embroidered name right into Lu Cheng's face. His voice was freezing cold. "Scholar Lu, since the Lu family is so utterly shameless and refuses to speak the truth, I will tear down this paper window for you." He pointed at Lu Jue on the bed, every word hitting the floor like a hammer. "This woman is no outsider fox spirit. She is the widow of your recently deceased elder brother, your own sister-in-law. You, a newly minted imperial scholar, educated by the state, dared to strip down and secretly meet with your widowed sister-in-law in a study while your brother's bones aren't even cold. Now that you've been caught, you, a grown man, not only lack a shred of responsibility, but you allow your mother to pin the entirety of this monstrous crime onto a weak woman. Lu Chengjiang, is this the morality you learned from a dozen years of reading the sages?" Lord Han's barrage of questions smashed into Lu Chengjiang's spine like a sledgehammer. His knees buckled, and with a heavy thud he fell back to the ground, too terrified to lift his head even an inch. Standing off to the side, feeling the thousands of needle-like glares of disgust from his colleagues and guests, Lu Zhongqian realized the century-old pristine reputation of the Lu family had just become the biggest joke in the capital. Unable to suppress the demonic rage in his heart any longer, he whipped around, grabbed the heavy wooden disciplinary ruler from the desk, and began furiously beating Lu Chengjiang over the head and body. "You reckless animal! You have thrown the faces of our ancestors into the mud." Lu Chengjiang screamed in agony, covering his head and desperately trying to dodge on the floor. But he didn't dare fight back. Seeing her favorite son beaten bloody, Sunday cried tears of sheer heartbreak. But with Lord Han coldly watching, she didn't dare step forward to stop her furious husband. With her chest full of rage and nowhere to vent it, all of it mutated into a bone-deep hatred for Lu Jue. She spun around, charged the bed with a vicious glare, raised her hand high, and slapped Jue's pitiful face with every ounce of strength she had. "You husband-killing curse! You plague! You seduced my son and ruined his future. Go die!" Just as the hand was about to strike again, Jue, like a cornered, desperate animal, suddenly whipped her head up and let out a blood-curdling, horrific scream. Stop. The scream was so shrill and cracked that it practically pierced the eardrums of everyone present. Not only did Sunday's hand freeze in mid-air, but even Lu Zhongqian instinctively stopped beating his son, clutching the wrinkled silk blanket tightly around herself. God knows where she found the strength. Jiwei actually rolled straight off the bed and fell heavily to her knees on the cold brick floor. She practically crawled over to Lord Han and started kowtowing frantically, her forehead quickly bleeding. "My lord, I have been wronged," she sobbed, her entire body convulsing. Tears mixed with cold sweat smeared across her face. She looked as though she had suffered the most horrific injustice in human history. "My lord, see the truth. It was Lu Chengjiang. All of this. Lu Chengjiang used his power to force me." Her wailing echoed through the dead silence of the bamboo pavilion like tearing silk. Lu Chengjiang froze as if he had been struck by lightning. "What did you just say?" He stared at the woman on the floor in absolute disbelief, his bloodshot eyes wide. Jiwei didn't even look at him. She just kept slamming her head into the floor for Lord Han. "My lord!" He knew he just became an imperial scholar and was about to get a post, so he used his power to threaten me. He told me the main branch only had me left, a widow with no one to rely on. He said if I gave myself to him, he would guarantee me a life of luxury in the Lu family. He said if I refused, he would find an excuse to throw me out on the street to die. I am just a weak, defenseless widow. My father is a commoner with no official rank. How could I possibly fight a powerful new scholar? To save my own life, I had to swallow the humiliation. He dragged me into this room by force. The two wild lovers who were calling each other sister and cuddling intimately behind the door just minutes ago had turned into mortal enemies in the blink of an eye. Lu Chengjiang finally snapped out of it. This bitch was using him as her scapegoat. Like a rabid dog, he lunged forward, grabbed the collar of Jiwei's thin robe, and screamed hysterically. "Lu Jiwei, you cheap whore! You dare frame me in public! You took off your own clothes and came begging me. You were the one who said my brother was a short-lived ghost who left no heir, and that you had no future in the Lu family. You begged me to put you out of your misery." Jiwei screamed in terror, collapsing to the floor like a puddle of mud, shrinking back in horror. "My lord, save me. He is still trying to attack me in public and force me to confess. Insolence. Let her go right now." Lord Han roared. Changzhong froze and limply let go. The eyes of the guests had shifted from mocking amusement to sheer disgust and revulsion. If it was just a consensual affair between in-laws, it could be written off as a moral failing. But if Lu Jiwei was actually forced under the threat of power, then Lu Chengjiang's crime became something entirely different. That was abuse of power and raping a widow. If a rookie scholar without a post dared to commit this kind of tyranny in his own home, what would he do when he was sent out to govern a province? Slaughter peasants and treat human lives like dirt. Listening to the whispers around him, Chang Zhang's eyes turned red with panic. He started frantically kowtowing to Lord Han. "It wasn't me. My lord, I swear I didn't force her. She seduced me. She begged me herself. She said she wanted to borrow my seed to leave an heir for the Lu family." "Borrow your seed?" Jiwei suddenly covered her face and let out a chilling, horrific laugh. She whipped her head up, and on her tear-stained face, a bizarre, terrifying confidence appeared. "Why would I ever need to beg you for a child?" Jiwei articulated every word slowly, her voice not loud, but carrying clearly to every single ear in the room. "I am already pregnant with my late husband's posthumous child." Boom! That light sentence hit the room like a boulder dropped into a deep pool, instantly sending massive shockwaves through the crowd. Sunday's hand, still raised halfway in the air to slap her again, froze completely solid. The bloody wooden ruler in Lu Zhongqian's hand dropped with a clack onto the brick floor, and Lu Chengjiang stared at Lu Jue's flat stomach, his eyes filling with absolute shock, followed instantly by the maddening realization that he had been played. A posthumous child. Jiwei wrapped her arms protectively around her stomach. Tears streamed down her face, but she looked as holy as a bodhisattva protecting her young. "Yes, I am carrying Chenggung's flesh and blood. If it weren't for protecting the sole heir of the main branch from being murdered by you, you animal, I would have killed myself to join my husband long ago. Why would I ever submit to your humiliation? Sunday's eyes were glued to Jiwei's stomach. The look that had just wanted to skin her alive suddenly mutated into something utterly nauseating. The eldest son was dead. If Jiwei was really carrying his flesh and blood, that child was the legitimate eldest grandson of the Liu family. Sunday, who had just been calling her a cheap whore, involuntarily swallowed hard. Her voice shook as she asked, Are you really pregnant? Jiwei nodded hard through her tears. It has been over 2 months. I originally wanted to wait until the pregnancy was stable before telling father and mother. Who could have known I would suffer such ultimate humiliation from second brother today? Sunday's old face twitched violently. If Jiwei was carrying the Liu family's golden grandson, the Liu family couldn't punish her. They had to treat her like a living god. And if the eldest daughter-in-law was a pure, innocent martyr, then this apocalyptic scandal had to be carried entirely by her worthless youngest son. Cheng Zhang. Sunday suddenly whipped around and, with zero warning, slapped her own son brutally across the face. You animal! Your sister-in-law is already carrying your brother's flesh and blood. And you, how could you violate her like this? Lu Chengjiang clutched his swollen face, staring blankly at the woman who suddenly felt like a complete stranger. Mother, you hit me. You actually believe her bullshit. Backed into a total dead end, Chengjiang's sanity completely shattered. Forgetting all respect for the dead, he screamed hysterically. The bastard in her stomach can't possibly be my brother's. My brother was crippled long ago. Jiwei's head snapped up, a flash of panic cutting through her eyes. Like a drowning man catching a lifeline, Chengjiang frantically searched the crowd, finally locking his desperate, hopeful eyes entirely onto me. I am not lying. My brother couldn't possibly leave a child. Zhoning can testify for me. He pointed at me, his voice hoarse. When I took my brother to the Huichun clinic to see about his hidden illness, Zhoning was there. The doctor said it himself. My brother was born with a defect and could never have children in this lifetime. Zhoning, tell them. Tell Lord Han. The baby in Liu Jiwei's stomach is a bastard of unknown origin. Instantly, the gaze of the entire courtyard swung toward me like a spotlight. I stared steadily at Lu Chengjiang's hopeful face, finding it all completely hilarious. He probably thought that the second he spoke, I would still act like the gentle, obedient Shay Zhoning, rushing forward without a second thought to fight his battles. I slowly lifted my head, clutching my mother's arm. My face drained of color inch by inch, until it was as pale as paper. Husband, I whispered the word in pure agony. Then, like a dried autumn leaf, I collapsed backward. Zhoning, my mother let out a heart-wrenching scream, catching me in her arms. In the final second, before I completely closed my eyes to play dead, I heard Lu Chengjiang hopping mad in the distance, screaming, Zhoning, you can't faint. Don't faint right now. Tell them the truth and save me. I rested comfortably in my mother's soft embrace. You want me to prove your innocence. Keep dreaming, Lu Chengjiang. In this life, you Liu family freaks can pay for your own rotting debts with your lives. The moment I collapsed into my mother's arms, I buried my face deep into the crook of her neck. Quietly, I tapped my fingers twice, extremely lightly, against her warm wrist. It was a secret signal I used as a child whenever I caused trouble and needed her to cover for me. Me mother's body went rigid for just a fraction of a second before she understood instantly. Zhoning, my poor suffering child. My mother amplified her voice, crying as if her heart had been ripped out. Immediately after, she whipped her head up, her fierce freezing gaze sweeping over the Liu family. My daughter just suffered a severe blow to the head, and then had to witness her own husband stripped half naked with his sister-in-law. The shock and grief have caused her to collapse. Are you people in the Liu family animals? At a time like this, you still want to force a weak, traumatized woman to testify for you? Lu Chengjiang rushed forward in a panic. Mother-in-law, Zhongning really knows about my brother seeking medical help. If she just says the truth, it'll expose Liu Zhuwei's true colors. She get lost. My mother shifted her body, shielding me completely. Her voice was cold enough to drop ice. The truth, Lu Chengjiang, you and your sister-in-law were locked in a room, half naked, and caught by dozens of guests. What does the bastard in her stomach have to do with the fact that you were acting like a degenerate animal in broad daylight? Does the fact that she's carrying a bastard somehow make you stripping down and groping your widowed sister-in-law a heroic act of justice? Her rapid-fire verbal assault hit the bullseye, leaving Lu Chengjiang completely speechless. Lord Han, standing by the door, also spoke up with a dark expression. Madam Shi speaks reason. Lu Chengjiang, if you doubt the origin of the child in Liu's womb, you should ask your clan elders to investigate, or submit evidence to the magistrate for trial. You do not use such an excuse to cover up your own incestuous, depraved acts today. Lu Chengjiang clenched his fists. Even though he was backed against a cliff with nowhere left to run, he still stared stubbornly at my unconscious face. Zhongning, wake up! I am your husband! How can you abandon me at a time like this? My mother gave no one in the Lu family another chance to speak. She decisively ordered Qingdai and the older maidservants who had come with us. What are you standing there for? Help the young lady out of here. A daughter of the Xia family will not stay in this man-eating hellhole to be humiliated any longer. Sunday panicked, trying to step forward to stop them. In-law, you misunderstand. We are just worried about Zhongning's health. She is, after all, the lawfully wedded wife of the Lu family. Now that she's unwell, she naturally belongs here to rest and recover. My mother shot her a death glare from the corner of her eye. Recover here? What? Stay here so she can open her eyes and watch her husband and sister-in-law get back into bed to figure out how to preserve the Lu family bloodline? Summoning in the crowd of onlookers couldn't hold it in any longer and burst into roaring laughter. Sunday's old face cycled through shades of green and white, and she couldn't spit out another word of protest. Carefully supported by the maids, I was loaded into the Xia family's spacious, stable carriage. As the curtain fell for the final time, I opened my eyes slightly and peeked through the gap. Lu Chengjiang stood at the courtyard gate like a stray dog. Half his face was swollen high, and his eyes were glued to the Xia family carriage, filled with terror, resentment, and toxic spite. It wasn't until the carriage left the alley where the Lu estate was located that I let out a long breath and slowly opened my eyes completely. My mother had been holding my shoulders tightly the entire time. Seeing me wake, her heart ached as she raised her hand to gently touch the scraped wound on my forehead. Does it hurt? I looked at the few strands of silver hair at my mother's temples, and my nose suddenly stung. In my past life, when news of my death reached her, her hair had turned completely white overnight. The tragic image was still burned into my mind. I suddenly reached out and hugged her warm body as tightly as I could. It hurts. I buried my face in her chest, my voice choking slightly, but the corners of my mouth curled into a massive smile. But in my heart, I feel incredible. My mother hugged me tighter. Zhongning, what do you want to do? Whatever you decide, your mother, your father, and the entire Xi family will support you. I rested against my mother's steady shoulder. Word by word, my voice was as light as mist, but filled with absolute, uncompromising resolve. I want an Yijie, a legally mandated absolute divorce, from Lu Chengjiang. My mother wasn't surprised. As long as you are willing to leave that fire pit, the Xi family will never let you go back to that man-eating house. I shook my head, my eyes terrifyingly clear. Mother, a simple mutual divorce is not enough. I wanted everyone in the capital to know that Lu Chengjiang was an incestuous, morally bankrupt degenerate. I wanted the official red seal from the magistrate's office, stating in black and white that Lu Chengjiang's crimes were unforgivable, granting me an Yijie, and I wanted every single piece of my dowry, my properties, and my storefronts returned to me. With interest. When we returned to the Xi estate, my father had not yet returned from court. My mother acted with lightning speed. She ordered the gates sealed, refused all visitors, and sent someone to fetch an old imperial physician we trusted from the Huichun clinic to examine me. The cut on my forehead looked scary but was just a flesh wound. As the old doctor wrote a prescription for a soothing, bruise-healing ointment and prepared to pack his medical box, I suddenly stopped him. "Doctor, please wait, I have a question." I paused, then asked, "If a woman claims to be over 2 months pregnant, tell me, doctor, can taking her pulse accurately determine the exact day of conception?" The old doctor stroked his white beard and thought for a moment. "I have practiced medicine for decades. Identifying a pregnancy pulse is natural, but to pinpoint the exact day of conception is truly difficult. A doctor can only estimate based on the strength of the pulse, the woman's menstrual cycle, and her physical reactions. If someone deliberately lied and claimed the pregnancy was 10 or so days younger than it actually is, it would be extremely difficult to expose the lie by pulse alone." I nodded thoughtfully and had Qingdai show the doctor out. Today, in front of all those guests, Jiwei had sworn she was over 2 months pregnant. Her husband, Lu Changeng, had died exactly 70-something days ago. Timeline-wise, her posthumous child lie fit perfectly, but I remembered vividly that in my past life, Jiwei had never breathed a single word about being pregnant while in the Lu estate. She had hurriedly moved back to her maiden home just 3 days after I suggested adopting an heir, and died mysteriously less than 6 months later. Thinking about it now, she hadn't died of grief. She had been terrified that any adopted heir would block her unborn child's path. She needed this child to be born as the legitimate posthumous son of the main branch, so she could legally swallow up all the main branch's properties. But Lu Changeng was utterly incapable of leaving an heir. So, what the hell was growing in Liu Jue's stomach? And more terrifyingly, if she was already pregnant, why had she gone through all the trouble of luring Lu Changzheng to the bamboo pavilion today? Just to find a fake father for her baby. That made no sense. She could have just played the victim and insisted it was Lu Chengheng's seed. Since the clinic visit was a highly guarded secret, as long as Lu Changzheng and I kept our mouths shut, her massive lie would have worked perfectly. Unless Zhu knew that Lu Changzheng knew his brother was impotent. So she had to drag Lu Changzheng down into the mud with her, making them grasshoppers tied to the same rope. As long as Lu Changzheng gave in to temptation and rolled in bed with her, he would never dare investigate the true bloodline of that child. Because if the truth came out, regardless of whose kid it was, Lu Changzheng would never escape the death penalty for incest with his sister-in-law. When I finally connected the dots, a cold sweat broke out across my back. This fragile little white lotus was unimaginably vicious. The chaotic scandal at the bamboo pavilion today wasn't Lu Changzheng's moment of foolish pity. It was a carefully laid, lethal trap designed entirely by Liu Jue. "Qingdai," I snapped back to reality, my voice low. "I am here, my lady. Go investigate Xuntao, the maid who came with Liu Jue as part of her dowry," I ordered softly. "In my past life." No, I remember that shortly after Lu Changeng died, the Lu family claimed Xuntao stole something and ran away. Send someone to find her family and see if she actually left the capital. Qingdai's expression turned serious as she mentally noted the order. Understood. Also, I pulled a silver ingot from my jewelry box and handed it to Qingdai. Send a few sharp-eyed guards to watch the back gate of the Lu estate. After the massive screw-up today, if Jiwei really does have a lover on the outside, that man will definitely try to get a message to her. By evening, my father returned from his office. Hearing about the absolute depravity of the Lu family, my father was furious. That very night in his study, he drafted a crushing, irrefutable lawsuit. The document listed the ironclad evidence of Lu Chengzheng's incestuous crimes. The final line was sharp as a knife. His actions betray all morality. The marital bond is entirely severed. My daughter of the Shi family wishes to terminate this dark union and return to the house of Shi. We beg the magistrate for a righteous judgment. Early the next morning, the that heavy lawsuit was submitted directly to the capital's magistrate court. By the afternoon, Qingdai returned with news. My lady, we found a lead. Chuntao never left the capital. She was secretly locked away in a rundown, isolated courtyard in the southern part of the city, beaten half to death. Also, late last night, a servant from the Liu family snuck out and delivered a letter to the south side. Qingdai handed me a slip of paper. The servant dropped the envelope, and our men memorized the name on it. Xu Huayan. Xu Huayan. I rolled the name around in my mouth. Who is that? He is the accountant at the Renji pharmacy in the South City, and he is the very same lover Liu Jiwei secretly almost married back when she was still a maiden. A bone-chilling cold, accompanied by ultimate, crystalline clarity, shot through my veins. Jiwei's pre-marriage lover just happened to be a pharmacy accountant. Right before my brother-in-law died, the maid who knew too much was secretly disposed of. And now, the second Jiwei's plot blew up. Someone was desperate to get a message to this accountant in the middle of the night. Watch that courtyard and Xu Huayan like hawks, I ordered, and check if all the medicine Liu Chenggung drank before he died was bought from this Renji pharmacy. Just then, the front yard manager came to report that Liu Chengjiang was kneeling directly in front of the Xia family's main gate. I let out a cold laugh. Yesterday, he was in the bamboo pavilion screaming at me for not testifying. Today, he was crawling to my door begging for peace. Let him into the side hall. A cup of tea later, Liu Chengjiang was brought in. The cold spring rain had soaked him to the bone, leaving him looking utterly pathetic. Jianing, I was wrong. He looked up, tears mixing with the rain on his face. What happened yesterday? Sister-in-law really threw herself at me. I never wanted to abandon you. I cut off his nauseating confession. You didn't kneel out there all morning to apologize. You are here to beg me to save your career. You want me to go to court and testify to expose Liu Jue's posthumous child's lie. Wild joy erupted in Chengjiang's eyes. Joning, as long as you withdraw the Yijie lawsuit and come back to the Liu family, I am willing to swear a blood oath to never take a concubine in this lifetime, and the Liu family is willing to permanently transfer the deed to the largest estate outside the city to your name. My mother sneered loudly. That estate was bought with Zhoning's dowry money. Using my daughter's money to act like you are giving her a gift. Is this the conduct of the scholarly Liu family? I looked down at him from above. You can leave. The magistrate has already accepted the lawsuit for absolute divorce. What you are terrified of isn't losing me as your wife. You are terrified of losing your official post and losing the Xia family as your political shield. Liu Chengjiang's mask completely tore off. His face twisted as he glared at me. Ji Jianing, it was just one moment of foolish play acting. Are you really going to destroy my entire life over this? One moment of foolishness? I laughed lightly. You and your sister-in-law locked the door and took your clothes off. That is one moment of foolishness. When caught, you blamed her. That is another moment of foolishness. And now, you are trying to force me to commit perjury. Is that still just a moment of foolishness? Throw him out. The guards dragged Liu Chengjiang away. That night, new intel came from the South City. Xu Huayan went to a local shrine and met with someone. Liu Jue's biological father, Liu Wencheng. Liu Wencheng handed Xu Huayan a heavy bag of silver, and Chuntao finally agreed to see me. I took a discreet mule cart through the night to the dilapidated courtyard in the south. Chuntao was skin and bones, her wrists covered in deep purple rope burns that went down to the bone. Before the eldest master died, Madame Liu already knew she was carrying a bastard. Chuntao cried. Xu Huayan checked her pulse himself. Did they have anything to do with the eldest master's death? I asked. No, the eldest master really was just too sick to survive. Chuntao shook her head repeatedly. Then why did she lock you up? Because once the eldest master died, Madame Liu realized the second master knew about his hidden illness. She was terrified the second master would expose the bastard's identity, so she forced me to deliver a letter to the second master, luring him to a secret meeting at the bamboo pavilion. She said as long as the second master touched her body, she would have a death grip on his weakness, and he would have to play along as her accomplice. I was terrified they would kill me, so I secretly hid an old love letter she wrote to Shuayan. When Madame Liu found out, she locked me in the Liu family's woodshed and tortured me. And the third miss, Lu Mingju, knew everything. She not only helped cover it up, but Madame Liu promised to give her a storefront for her dowry once the deed was done. What an absolute house of villains the Liu family was. From a hidden compartment under her bedboard, Chun Tao pulled out a yellowed letter. The first 4 words were glaring, "My beloved Huiyan." At the end of the letter, it clearly stated her suspicion that she was already pregnant with his child. And the date on the letter was exactly 21 days before Lu Chenggeng died. I safely tucked away this lethal piece of ironclad evidence, promised Chun Tao the protection of the Xia family, and left the dark courtyard. 3 days later, the magistrate's court officially opened the trial. In the courtroom, Lu Chengjiang, Liu Juwei, Xu Huaiyan, and Liu Wenchang were all present. The moment the magistrate slammed his gavel, Zhu Wei started wailing. She presented a love letter Liu Chengjiang had allegedly written to her, attempting to pin the charge of rape by abuse of power firmly onto him. Unable to defend himself against the forged letter, Liu Chengjiang fought like a rabid dog, publicly exposing his dead brother's impotence in a desperate bid to prove the child was a bastard. Right as the two were tearing each other apart, Xu Huaiyan, who had been silent, suddenly confessed. I confess to everything. The child in Liu Juwei's womb is mine. Years ago, Master Liu demanded an astronomical bride price. I couldn't pay, so he made a secret deal with me. As long as I stole medicine from the pharmacy and sold it to him at rock-bottom prices to resell for profit, he would allow Juwei and me to continue our affair. Xu Huaiyan submitted the pharmacy's dual ledger books as hard proof. Lu Wencheng collapsed to the floor. Jiwei let out a scream of absolute despair, and decided if she was going down, she was taking everyone with her. She pointed at Lu Chengjiang and screamed, "This wasn't just my idea." Lu Chengjiang had his eyes on the main branch's properties all along. He knew perfectly well this child wasn't a Lu, but he still got into bed with me. Half a month ago, he forced me to hand over the land deeds and ledgers of the main branch. He was just waiting for this child to be born as the eldest grandson, so he could legally swallow every last penny. Lu Chengjiang's face turned the color of ash as he made his final dying struggle. My lord, I was just foolish for a moment. Whether you were seduced or not, the evidence speaks for itself. I walked calmly into the courtroom, handing over the old letters Jiwei wrote to Shuayan, as well as the pearl earrings Jiwei used to bribe Lu Mingju, directly to the magistrate. This letter is enough to prove that Liu Jiwei knew from the very beginning the child was not of Liu blood. And these earrings, along with the maid Chun Tao's testimony, prove that Lu Mingju covered up the incest and assisted in the plot to steal the family property. With witnesses and physical evidence all present, the case was airtight. The magistrate's face was like iron as he immediately handed down the sentences. Liu Jiwei committed adultery while married, attempting to muddy the family bloodline and steal their assets. She was to be imprisoned pending trial, to be severely punished according to the law after giving birth. Xu Huaiyan was sentenced to exile for 3,000 miles. Liu Wencheng was stripped of his scholarly rank, and his family assets were confiscated. Lu Mingju was fined 100 taels of silver and ordered to remain under house arrest. Lu Chengjiang, the magistrate's gaze pierced him like a sword. You completely disregarded human morality, committing incest with your widowed sister-in-law. Knowing the bloodline was false, you conspired to deceive your superiors and steal family property. I will report this to the Ministry of Personnel immediately. Lu Chengjiang is hereby stripped of his imperial scholar rank and banned from government service for life. Lu Chengjiang let out a blood-curdling scream and passed out on the floor. Finally, the magistrate picked up the Shi family's lawsuit. Regarding Shi Zhongning's petition for an Yijie absolute divorce, the court grants it. All dowry items, estates, and storefronts belonging to the Shi family must be returned in full by the Liu family within 3 days. The gavel slammed down. The verdict was final. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunlight. Even the air tasted like freedom. 10 days later, in order to return my dowry, the Liu family had to sell off more than half of their lands and estates. The relatives who used to cling to them scattered like rats from a sinking ship. I thought this was the end of the Liu family, but a month later, as my father was ordered by the emperor to go south for disaster relief, and my mother and I were packing to go with him, Liu Chengjiang actually showed up at our door. He was emaciated, his eyes glowing with the manic desperation of a cornered rat. "Joning, I have critical intelligence regarding the mountain pass on your route south." My heart skipped a beat. In my past life, that exact mountain pass at Qingshailing was where my carriage was ambushed, where I lost my unborn twins, and where my daughter was crippled for life. Liu Chengjiang pulled out a map pointing at Qingshailing. My mother and Mingzhu hired thugs to ambush the Shi family convoy there and steal the chests holding your silver notes and land deeds. They bribed Zhao Gui, your former carriage driver. He looked at me, a sickeningly greedy smile on his face. "Give me 500 taels of silver, and have your father write me a letter of recommendation to teach at an academy in the south? Then I'll tell you exactly where Zhao Gui and those thugs are hiding." I looked at his despicable face and said coldly, "The Shi family didn't cost you your rank. Your own shamelessness did. You want to sell this info? Fine. Write down the entire plot and sign it with your thumbprint." Thinking I had compromised, Liu Chengjiang eagerly wrote down everything. By the end, he confessed that he not only knew about the plot and didn't report it, but he had actually told Sunday exactly which chests contained my most valuable items. The moment I had the confession in hand, my father waved his hand. "Take this to the magistrate's court. Give the map and the confession to the magistrate." The smile froze on Liu Chengjiang's face. "You tricked me. We never promised to cover up your crimes," I said, looking down at him as the guards pinned him to the floor. "You didn't come to save me. You came to sell your mother and sister's crimes for cash. Your greatest talent in life is calling your own greed someone else's fault." We didn't cancel our trip south. We set a trap. When we reached Qingshailing, Zhao Gui led the convoy onto the remote old road just as expected. A group of masked men charged out, but they were immediately swarmed by undercover government guards hiding in the shadows. Lu Mingzhu was caught on the spot, fake pawnshop documents hidden in her robes. Sunday was dragged out of her old house in the capital in chains. The mountain ambush that had destroyed half my life in my past incarnation was severed before it could even begin, turning into dust in the wind. When the final news arrived, I was standing on a ferry heading south. The river breeze blew my sleeves as the green mountains rolled slowly backward. Liu Chengjiang was sentenced to hard labor for participating in the plot and failing to report it. Sunday and Mingzhu received their respective harsh sentences. The Liu family was completely permanently finished. The floods in the south were worse than expected. When we arrived in Yunzhou, I didn't stay in the comfortable government manor. Instead, Qingdai and I took over the porridge relief tents in the eastern part of the city. I overhauled the token distribution system, caught corrupt officials skimming the ledgers, and helped my father recover massive amounts of stolen government grain. Later, I used my dowry money to rent an abandoned weaving factory. We took in women who had lost their homes, teaching them to spin thread and weave cloth so they could support themselves. We also set up an orphanage for the children left behind. A year later, the Yunzhou levees were completely rebuilt. The women in the factory pooled their money and turned the factory into a fully operational business. They voted for me to be the owner, but I politely declined, only helping them draft their equity and dividend rules. True salvation meant giving them the power to control their own lives. My father was highly commended for his disaster relief efforts and was transferred to govern another province. On the day we left Yunzhou, a massive crowd of commoners came to see us off. A little girl from the orphanage named Ah Man, clutching the book bag I gave her, chased my carriage all the way to the city gates, asking if I would ever come back. "When you learn to write your own name, I'll come back and check." I smiled, patting her head. The carriage rolled up the hill. My mother held my hand, asking softly, "Your father worries that because of that man in the Liu family, you'll never believe true love exists in this world again." I looked out the window at the roaring river and the endless rolling mountains. And I smiled gently. If one day I meet someone worth walking alongside, I won't reject him because of my past. But that man will never be my lifeline, nor will he be my entire world. And if I never meet him, that is fine too. In my past life, I locked my entire existence inside the walls of an estate, believing my husband's future was my future. In this life, I have seen the rich earth left behind after the floods receded. I have seen disaster victims rebuild their homes with their own hands. I have seen a group of women, who once had nowhere to go, use their own two hands to light up an entire factory. The world is so incredibly vast. A woman's worth is never defined by who she marries, who loves her, or whose family line she continues. She can balance ledgers, she can save the starving, she can run a factory, and she can walk across 1,000 mountains and 10,000 rivers entirely on her own. This time, there is no empty coffin, no high walls, and no one who can decide my path for me. Xi Zhoning's life finally belongs only to Xie Zhoning. I need to talk about the door, not the kicking it down moment. That comes later, and it is spectacular. I mean the first door, the one she closes. Because in her last life, she heard the moaning, busted in, played the hero, covered the scandal, protected her husband's career, and got nailed into a coffin for her trouble. This time, she pulls the door shut with a soft click, traps the sounds inside, and thinks, "Number this time. You open it yourselves." That click is the most satisfying sound in this entire story. It is not revenge. It is a woman deciding she will never again clean up a mess that isn't hers. And the engineering that follows. My God, Mingju runs up shrieking, "Kick the door down! Throw that woman out! Save my brother's career!" And Xi Zhoning just tilts her head, blinks, plays dumb. "Since you see the situation so clearly, why don't you go in yourself? I am an unmarried girl. How can I look at something so filthy?" "Oh, you can't look at it, but I can." 3 lines and she has already dismantled the entire Liu family logic. When he succeeds, he is their golden boy. When he drops his pants, he is suddenly my husband and my problem to fix. She saw through this scam in her last life too late. This time she names it out loud, watches Ming's short circuit, and then delivers the kill shot, playing the timid wife so convincingly that Ming's runs to get mother-in-law Sunday. Which is exactly what she wanted, because she knows Sunday. She knows the woman is a paranoid control freak who cannot physically resist kicking down a door someone is guarding. The harder Zhoning begs, "Please don't go in," the harder Sunday will shove. It is reverse psychology so clean, it should be in a textbook. And the forehead. She uses Sunday's shove to crack her own head against a rock. Not because she is weak, because she needs to be bleeding when her mother arrives. She needs the visual. She needs every noble woman in that garden to see a young wife with blood running down her face, shoved aside by her own mother-in-law, while her husband is behind that door doing unspeakable things. She staged a crime scene using her own forehead as the prop. This woman directed her own trauma like a cinematographer. Then the door opens, and it is perfect. The new imperial scholar, hair wrecked, robes stripped, shielding a daybed. Behind him, a woman in mourning white scrambling under a quilt, and on the floor, right next to his feet, a mourning sash embroidered with his dead brother's name. Not a word needed. The sash said everything. The silence in that courtyard could fossilize bone. And Lord Han, the man who decides whether Liu Chengjiang gets a cushy government post or a career death sentence, is standing right there, watching because the chaos was loud enough to drag him from the front banquet. Because Sunday's screaming about filthy things got warped by a servant into a thief broke in. Because Zhoning calculated that in a packed, chaotic estate, noise travels and powerful men follow it. She didn't invite Lord Han. She created the conditions for Lord Han to invite himself. The woman doesn't play chess. She builds the board and lets gravity move the pieces. But my absolute favorite moment, when Lu Chengjiang points at her and screams, Jianing can testify for me. She knows my brother was impotent. The baby is a bastard. Every eye in the courtyard swings to her. This is his last card. His Hail Mary. He is betting everything on the assumption that his obedient little wife will still rush forward to fight his battles. She looks at him, whispers, "Husband," in the most heartbroken voice imaginable, and faints, crumples into her mother's arms like a dried leaf, eyes closed. Done. Goodbye. The most devastating tactical feint in literary history. She didn't refuse to testify. That would look defiant. She didn't testify. That would save him. She simply removed herself from the equation with the one move nobody can argue with. The poor girl was so traumatized she lost consciousness. And while she is unconscious, she taps her mother's wrist twice. A childhood signal meaning, "Cover for me." Her mother understands instantly and unleashes a verbal firestorm. You want a traumatized, bleeding woman to testify for the man who was just caught half naked with his sister-in-law? Mother-daughter tactical coordination, rehearsed since childhood. Deployed in a courtroom of public opinion without a single word spoken aloud. I need a moment. The ending elevates this from revenge fantasy to something genuinely beautiful, because she doesn't just win the divorce and walk away. She goes south, into flood zones, into relief camps, and builds something. A porridge distribution system. An anti-corruption investigation. A weaving factory staffed entirely by displaced women. An orphanage. An entire economy of survival, built with her own dowry money and her own two hands. A woman's worth is never defined by who she marries. She said that standing on a ferry, watching green mountains roll past, with the Liu family in ruins behind her, and an entire province rebuilt ahead of her. No man waiting at the destination. No romance framing her freedom. Just a woman who finally owns her own life, sailing toward whatever comes next. Vera's book club poll, which moment was the most satisfying? The click she closes the door, traps them inside, and decides she will never clean up someone else's mess again. The softest, most devastating sound in the story. You can't look, but I can. Fei 3 lines to dismantle the entire Liu family logic. His success equals their pride. His scandal equals her cleanup duty. She named it and watched Mingzhu malfunction. The tactical feint husband. Collapses, didn't refuse to testify. Didn't comply, just vanished from the equation with the most strategically perfect loss of consciousness ever performed. 2 taps on her mother's wrist. Cover deployed. Flawless Lord Han reads the sash, picking up the mourning cloth. Reading the dead brother's name in silver thread. Every word a death sentence for Lu Chengjiang's career. The quietest execution in the story. Yi Sunday destroys her own son, ripping off the blanket, screaming, "Witch, cheap whore." Then hearing Zhi Wei's voice and realizing she just publicly exposed her own family's incest. The face journey from rage to horror to nausea. Priceless. The fairy south. No man, no revenge. Just green mountains, a rebuilt province, and a woman who finally belongs to herself. The most powerful final image possible.